heb nooit geweten dat ik zoiets als Asperger had. Ik wist niet dat het bestond. Autisten waren van die fladderende jongetjes, heel moeilijk te bereiken in een hoekje, non-verbaal, non-communicatief. En ik achtte me daar niet onder, ook niet de eerste seconde dat het me duidelijk gemaakt werd dat ik dan autist was. Of Asperger, daar zijn dan de heren doktoren het ook nog niet allemaal zo over eens.
Asperger's syndrome, some people consider it to be the high-functioning autism, and autism, many people now recognize, is the most severe of the childhood psychiatric conditions. It is diagnosed in childhood, or it should be, but it lasts right through life, and essentially it affects social relationships. So these are people who have difficulty in making normal social relationships.
Ik leef mijn leven alsof ik het met de verkeerde hand moet overschrijven uit een boek. Iedere impuls en iedere indruk die ik binnenkrijg, die moet beredeneerd worden op een verstandelijk niveau. Dat maakt het voor een autist ontzettend moeilijk om precies uit te leggen waar autisten nou mee zitten, waar het nou op terecht komt. Oké, we zijn anders, maar hoe anders ben je dan? Fundamenteel anders. Er is niets wat vanzelf gaat.
I think that it's a very good way to understand Asperger's is to see it as a difference, that they are processing information about the world very differently to other people. And in some contexts, this actually leads to an advantage, that they are identifying more detail and gaining a better understanding of a system compared to people without Asperger's syndrome. But when it comes to the social world, the fact that they're not picking up emotional information in the natural way can lead to them experiencing a disability.
Bij Asperger is het zo dat je ziet dan een paard en dan een vis, dan een vogel, dan een bij, dan weer wat anders. En dat verspringen van aandacht, het van het ene in het andere huppen, dat is de manier waarop ik het leven ervaar. Ik blijf steken in de details. En Asperger weet het als geen ander neer te zetten. Dat je onmogelijk je standpunt kunt vast blijven houden op één gefixeerd punt. En dat is tegelijkertijd de sterkte van autisme, denk ik. Dat je welk willekeurig onderwerp van hele verschillende kanten kunt bekijken. En dat verschaft een vrijheid in denken en een vrijheid, ook nog eens niet gehinderd door storende invloeden als gevoelens of karaktertrekken. Ja, noem maar wat, jaloezie, hebzucht, dat soort shit, heb ik niks mee te maken.
People with Asperger's differ from one to another. It's hard to generalize. And many of them have different coping strategies. So, for example, some completely withdraw and remain very solitary. They may spend most of their day and night alone, just going out of their home for the essentials, and may not even be able to tolerate going to work because work has some social demands. And some people with Asperger's try to teach themselves in a very explicit way some of the rules for social behavior because they don't come naturally.
Als ik ervaringen naar de rand overdenk, dan heb ik altijd een referentiekader uit eerdere ervaringen. Mijn geheugen speelt erbij een grote rol natuurlijk, omdat ik als observator de situatie weer waarneem. En dat zijn dingen die sla ik op met een videorecordertje en dat speel ik later terug in een bepaalde vorm. Dat zijn niet alleen die waarnemingen met de ogen, maar dan ook de geuren, de geluiden. En die totale die sluit ik op en dan heb ik een soort ladekastje, zo zie ik mijn geheugen, waarin ik gelijkaardige situaties in opgeslagen heb. En de kaartjes die daarin zitten, of de dia's zo je wil, die daarin zitten, geven weer van wat een vergelijkbare situatie is. Als ik het postkantoor binnenkom, dan probeer ik te zien wat daar gebeurt. Dat is ik moet erop opmerkzaam worden. Dus dat betekent dat ik eerst langs alle afleidingspogingen van de reclame heen moet. Dan moet ik me richten op een loket en dan moet ik daar bijvoorbeeld een rij zien staan. En ik moet dan weten, ik moet bewust tevoorschijn trekken uit dat register dat ik mezelf achteraan aan die rij aan moet sluiten. En dat ik dan vanzelf met de rij mee moet schuifelen naar voren voordat ik aan de beurt ben om mijn dingetje te doen in het postkantoor. Zo'n rij, een plaatje van een rij, heb ik in mijn register opgeslagen. Dat kost ontzettend veel energie om het goed te hanteren. Dat is niet iets wat vanzelf gaat. Ik ben daar goed 1,5 jaar achter dat dat niet bij iedereen zo is.
If you look at the sex ratio, for example, in Asperger's syndrome, it's about 9 males for every 1 female. So there's something going on with an association between Asperger's and maleness. Well, my theory is, it's called the extreme male brain theory of autism. And it's as simple as that autism may be an extreme of the male brain. The theory assumes that there are sex differences in the mind, and that the key dimensions along which the sexes differ are empathy and systemizing. So empathy is obviously the ability to put yourself into somebody else's shoes and to imagine what they're thinking or feeling. Little boys tend to choose toys which are mechanical and constructional, whereas little girls tend to be much more interested in playing with other children or playing with dolls where you can act a social and perhaps emotional theme. Then when you look at children with Asperger's syndrome, they seem to show the male pattern in an even more extreme way. For example, spending much of their day trying to understand a system, it could be the computer, and spending far less time interacting with people. We're testing whether these children and adults are an extreme of the male profile, where their empathy is below the average range, but where their ability to systemize may be above the normal range.
There's a series of 10 diagrams here. All of them show a lever on the left being pulled in a downwards motion. Would you like to go through each of the diagrams and tell me what you think would happen to the 2 bobs?
Okay. In the first one, I would say that the left-hand bob is going down and the right-hand one is going up.
Okay.
In number 2, the left-hand bob is going down, the right-hand one isn't going to move. In this one, the left-hand one is going down and the right-hand one is going up. In this one, they will both go up.
Okay.
In this one, the left-hand one is going up and the right-hand one is going down. In this one, the left-hand one is going down, the right-hand one is also going down.
Okay. Did you find that easy or difficult?
I found it pretty easy, actually.
Can you describe how you sort of approached the task?
Just in terms of physics, really tracing down the motion of each beam from where the pivots are and swapping around the direction every time you cross a pivot.
So your approach is quite systematic? Right.
They may be able to understand a system more quickly, but in other contexts, such as the social, they're not processing the emotional information and the information about other people's minds so easily, where it leads to a disability.
Hoe troost je iemand als je zelf helemaal geen besef hebt van wat verdriet is? Bijvoorbeeld als mijn kind zich stoot en hij huilt, moet hij getroost worden. Ongeacht of ik weet waar hij zich gestoten heeft, aan zijn knie of aan zijn elleboog. Dat komt pas in de 2e of de 3e seconde daarna. Maar mijn reactie, mijn reflex in eerste instantie is niet het overeind vliegen. Hij huilt, De koppeling wordt verstandelijk gemaakt, overeind. De koppeling wordt verstandelijk gemaakt, troosten. En dat troosten heb ik dan weer opgeslagen in een registertje op een setje dia's, waarbij het heel zorgvuldig en heel doeltreffend en heel erg to the point een vorm heeft gekregen die ook dan werkt bij het kind. Als mijn kind dan getroost is, kan ik weer terug. Er is geen seconde geweest in heel die sequence dat ik bevangen word door de paniek of de angst of de bezorgdheid die andere mensen wel schijnen te hebben.
Certainly, there are a lot of tests in the area of psychology which show that women are more sensitive to emotional cues compared to men. And that could be emotional cues in the face or in the voice. And that women are spending more attention to social aspects of the environment. So these differences do exist, but in most cases the differences are not so great that they're causing major difficulties. It's only when you get to the area of Asperger's, for example, and some other psychiatric conditions where empathy has become so reduced that it has a big impact on other people around them.
In this one, the 4 words are jealous, panicked, arrogant, and hateful. All you have to do is let me know which one best describes the photograph.
So we designed a test which involved the person looking at photographs of people's faces, but all they were shown was the region around the eyes. And it's a difficult test because you have minimal information to use. And we wanted to make the test difficult so that we could reveal differences between the sexes, if they were present, and also differences between the normal group and the group with Asperger's syndrome.
He looks inquisitive with his eyebrow up in one corner, but that's not one of the options. I don't know, but I would say it isn't dispirited or apologetic. I'm going to guess at friendly.
Okay.
And what we found was that women were indeed slightly but significantly better than men in decoding emotions just from the eyes, and that people with autism or Asperger's syndrome scored significantly lower on this test.
This is an average kind of hand of an Asperger's individual, and you can see that this individual has got a very long ring finger in comparison to their index finger. This is the finger which is related to testosterone levels before birth. This is the finger which is related to estrogen levels before birth. And you can see this individual has had high testosterone before birth relative to the amount of estrogen they've had. And this is typical of an Asperger's subject.
Okay, you ready? Yep.
The left hemisphere is usually dominant for language, and the right hemisphere is usually dominant for spatial abilities. And it's probably also important for analysing a system. So some people have found that, for example, when women are analysing speech or producing speech, they're actually using both hemispheres when they are listening or producing speech, whereas for men they tend to rely more strongly on the left hemisphere, so they're more strongly lateralized in the terminology. These are just some of the examples of differences in the brain. We think the cause of Asperger's syndrome is both genetic and also possibly hormonal. The genetic evidence really comes from the fact that it runs in families, but the hormonal evidence is really a new theory. We know that prenatal testosterone differs in male and female fetuses in terms of the amount that is secreted. And we know also from animal studies that this little hormone shapes the development of the male and female brain. So if autism is an extreme of the male brain, it may be under the control of this hormone, prenatal testosterone.
There are probably a number of different areas in the body that we can look for evidence of early effects of sex hormones, but the hand is a particularly good area. The reason for this is that the genes which control the formation of the testes, which produce testosterone, and the ovaries that produce estrogen, these genes are the very same genes which control the formation of the fingers. So it follows from that, if you're interested in early levels of sex hormone, testosterone and estrogen, you should look at patterns of finger formation in individuals. And this will give you a clue. And it is in fact a sort of living fossil fixed in the hand, which tells us something about what happened to you before birth. This is an average female hand. You can see when you compare the ring finger with the index finger, you can see this individual has had quite high amounts of estrogen before birth and quite low amounts of testosterone. And that's absolutely typical of females. Females have before birth quite high estrogen exposure and quite low testosterone exposure. On the other hand, males, and this male has, if we look at his ring finger, you can see that he's had quite high testosterone, and if you look at his index finger, quite low estrogen. So in relative amounts, he has a typical male kind of environment before birth, but not as testosteronized as an Asperger's individual has had. And there is an old idea that testosterone before birth inhibits the growth of the left hemisphere and reduces one's verbal ability, whereas it enhances the growth of the right hemisphere, where one finds mathematics and visuospatial ability and musical ability, and those are essentially male-type traits. So the idea that testosterone can lead to an extreme male brain is a perfectly reasonable idea. But there are some females that are Asperger's and autistic, and these females also have very long ring fingers compared to their index fingers. So some females do have high testosterone before birth, and this can affect the development of their central nervous system, including their brain.
We have looked at some women with Asperger's syndrome, and obviously they are less common than males with Asperger's. So our studies are quite small, but in all cases we haven't found any sex difference between males and females with Asperger's. That's to say that when the men with Asperger's are showing an extreme male brain, so are the women with Asperger's.
Amy had been looking forward to the fancy dress birthday party all week. She had spent quite a lot of time, effort and money on perfecting her mermaid costume, and she was very pleased with the result. In fact, Amy was so excited that as she got out of the taxi, she bumped into a woman walking along the pavement. "Oh, I'm so sorry," said Amy. "You should try looking where you're going, you stupid cow," the woman replied, and carried on along the pavement.
Okay, was something said in that section that could have upset someone?
Yes, there was.
Right, which bit do you think could have upset someone?
The woman on the street accusing this lady, Amy, of being a stupid cow.
Right. What we had in the social stories task was 3 different types of section. There were some sections without any target. There were some sections with a very subtle target, a difficult to spot target, and some that had a very clear-cut, blatant target. For example, one woman being referred to as being a stupid cow, for example, is a clear example of how someone could become upset. Okay, we'll go on to the next section now.
The door was opened by their old friend Toby. "Hello, you guys. Great costumes," said Toby. "My goodness, Amy, are you expecting another one? Come on in and I'll get you some drinks."
Okay, how about in that section?
Possibly, yeah. Are you expecting another one? could mean that she's pregnant, or if she's not pregnant, he's implying that she's fat.
What we found was that the females would find all of the blatant targets quite easily. They would also spot most of the subtle targets. The males without Asperger's would have more trouble with the subtle targets. If we look at the males with Asperger's, we see that they are scoring significantly lower than the males without Asperger's syndrome. So we find a variation going down in steps, all of which are significant, from females to males with Asperger's syndrome. The people with Asperger's, they even had problems with the blatant targets. Some of them performed very well, but what we found was that their entire approach to the problem was very different. Whereas most people would read the story and almost have a gut reaction, the people with Asperger's would reason through the problem.
Well, I know that if you say to someone you're expecting another one, that means that you think they're pregnant. If they are pregnant, that would mean that they would have a larger stomach. If they're not pregnant, then it would still mean they had a larger stomach, but for a different reason, because they were fat. And I know that people would take that as an insult.
I think an average male will display many aspects of the kind of behaviour that we associate with Asperger's syndrome. The kind of approach to problems, looking for a rule, dealing with one thing at a time. So you find the same types of approach, you just find them to a less extent. You find coexisting with this approach the sort of flexibility that you would associate with females. So you find a much more balanced cognitive profile that the people with Asperger's just don't have.
It's true that many of the traits are quite common in the general population, but that doesn't mean we all have autism. Autism is quite an extreme case, and so and if we don't want the term to become meaningless, we should restrict it for just describing those individuals at the extreme.
Ik merk dat ik minder energie kan opbrengen om dat diasysteem, dat register te onderhouden. Ja, en dat maakt dat met name het autistische in mijn wezen met de dag sterker naar boven komt. Terwijl de energie om het getemd te houden steeds minder wordt. En als ik datgene zou doen wat ik zelf wil, wat er natuurlijk in mij zit, dan denk ik dat ik mezelf aan zo min mogelijk belasting van buitenaf zou proberen te houden. En op het moment dat ik dat doe, betekent dat ik me dan dus afzijdig houd van andere mensen, van andere indrukken, door ze proberen te versimpelen. Ik neem aan dat ik dan mezelf als een kluizenaar zou gaan opstellen. Dat ik echt mezelf zou terugtrekken om het risico te minimaliseren dat ik in problemen kom met zaken van mensen waar ik geen antwoord op heb.